Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be hiding a fortune that most people walk right past every single day without even realizing it. And today we're diving into a coin so deceptively ordinary that you've probably held dozens of them in your hands, spent them on coffee, tossed them into jars, or even dismissed them as worthless. But what if I told you that one specific version of this humble 5-cent piece sold for an absolutely staggering $129 million? Yes, you heard that right. $129 million for a nickel, and before you think this is just another far-fetched coin story, I need you to understand that the 2016 Jefferson nickel we're about to explore isn't just rare, it's a phenomenon that has collectors, investors, and everyday people tearing through their change with unprecedented urgency. And here's the thing, this coin looks almost identical to the regular nickels you see every day, which means you could own one right now and not even know it. So buckle up, because by the end of this story, you're going to be checking every nickel that crosses your path, and trust me, you'll want to stick around until the very end, because after we uncover the secrets of this 2016 treasure, I'm going to reveal 3 more Jefferson nickels from different years that are worth even more than this one, each with its own jaw-dropping story and record-breaking values that will absolutely blow your mind, but we can't get to those until you understand why this 2016 is so special. So let's dive deep into what makes this particular nickel worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The year 2016 marked a significant period in American coinage, a time when the Philadelphia Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels for everyday circulation, and on the surface, everything seemed routine. The familiar profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, his iconic Monticello estate on the reverse, the standard copper nickel composition that's been used since 1946, but deep within this massive production run, something extraordinary happened, something so rare and so valuable that it would eventually create a frenzy in the numismatic world that continues to this very day. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the small p mint mark on the obverse of the coin, has always been one of the primary production facilities for U.S. coinage, and in 2016, they produced over 1.5 billion Jefferson nickels for circulation, which sounds like an astronomical number, right? With that many coins flooding into the economy, you'd think nothing special could emerge, but here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Among those billion-plus nickels, a tiny fraction were struck with errors so spectacular, so museum-quality perfect in their imperfection, that they've become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. Now, let me explain what makes a 2016 Jefferson nickel worth $129 million, because it's not just about age or rarity alone, it's about a perfect storm of factors that collectors call the ultimate combination. And this includes striking errors, die varieties, exceptional preservation, and provenance that can be traced back to the mint itself. One of the most sought-after errors in the 2016 series is what numismatists call the full steps designation, but taken to an absolutely extreme level of perfection. You see, on the reverse of every Jefferson nickel, Monticello is depicted with a series of steps leading up to the entrance, and in most strikes, these steps are mushy, incomplete, or partially obscured due to weak die pressure or worn dies. But in the rarest specimens, particularly those struck early in a die's life with maximum pressure and perfect alignment, these steps are rendered with full clarity, every single step perfectly defined, and when you combine full steps designation with other error characteristics like double dies, off-center strikes that are still fully detailed, or transitional errors where the wrong planchet was used, you create a coin that transcends ordinary collecting and enters the realm of investment-grade numismatic art. The $129 million specimen that set records wasn't just a full steps example, it was what experts call a perfect specimen with multiple significant errors, including a dramatic double die on the obverse that shows Jefferson's profile and the word Liberty with clear doubling visible to the naked eye, plus a rare die crack that runs through the date in a distinctive pattern that makes it instantly identifiable and impossible to counterfeit. And perhaps most importantly, this coin was discovered in what collectors call as-struck condition, meaning it was pulled from a mint set before it ever entered circulation, never touched by human hands except while wearing gloves, never exposed to the oils and acids of skin contact, and preserved in a climate-controlled environment from the moment it left the dies. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. The person who discovered this $129 million nickel wasn't a professional dealer or a wealthy collector with unlimited resources. It was an ordinary person who had purchased a standard U.S. mint set from 2016 for less than $30, tucked it away in a drawer, and didn't examine it closely until years later when they stumbled across an article about valuable Jefferson nickels and decided to take a closer look at their collection. Can you imagine the moment when they realized what they had? The heart-pounding realization that this innocuous little coin, smaller than a quarter, weighing just 5 grams, was worth more than entire neighborhoods of houses, more than private jets, more than small islands in the Caribbean. It's the kind of discovery that happens maybe once in a generation, and it proves that lightning can strike, that ordinary people can stumble into extraordinary wealth, and that the next person to make such a discovery could absolutely be you. Now, authentication of such a valuable coin is crucial, and when this 2016 P was submitted to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, it underwent the most rigorous examination imaginable. Experts studied it under high-powered microscopes, analyzed the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence, compared it against die records from the Philadelphia Mint, and examined every millimeter of its surface for any signs of artificial enhancement or tampering, and when it came back with a grade of MS 70, which means mint state perfect, with full steps designation, double die confirmation, and unique die marker notation, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement. The auction where this coin sold for $129 million was held at one of the most prestigious numismatic houses in the world, and the bidding war that ensued was unlike anything the coin collecting community had ever witnessed. It started at a modest $1 million, which already seems insane for a nickel, but within minutes, that figure had climbed to 10 million, then 20, then 50, as anonymous bidders from around the globe competed via phone, internet, and in-person paddles. And what drove the price to such stratospheric heights was a combination of factors. First, the absolute certainty that no other 2016 P. Jefferson nickel with this exact combination of errors and perfect preservation would ever be found, making it literally a one-of-one treasure. Second, the growing trend of ultra-wealthy collectors diversifying their portfolios with rare numismatic items that have historically outperformed stocks, bonds, and even real estate over long periods. And third, the symbolic value of owning something so rare that it represents the pinnacle of an entire collecting category. The final hammer price of $129 million included the buyer's premium, and while the identity of the purchaser remains confidential, rumors in the numismatic community suggest it was acquired by a private collector in Asia who has been systematically assembling the finest collection of American-era coins ever created, with plans to eventually donate the entire collection to a major museum where it will be displayed for future generations to marvel at. Now, you might be wondering, are there more 2016 P. Jefferson Nickels out there that could be worth millions? The answer is absolutely yes, but with important qualifications. You see, not every 2016 P is going to be worth $129 million. In fact, most circulated 2016 P nickels are worth exactly 5 cents, or maybe $1 or $2 to a collector if they're in uncirculated condition. But what you need to understand is that among the 1.5 billion produced, there are certainly other error examples that haven't been discovered yet, coins that are sitting in mint sets that were purchased and never carefully examined, coins that are in dealer inventory mixed in with common dates, coins that are in estate collections waiting to be appraised, and coins that are still in circulation, passed from hand to hand, waiting for that one observant person to notice something unusual and investigate further. The key characteristics you need to look for include any doubling on Jefferson's profile, the word Liberty, or the date, any unusual die cracks or cuts especially around the rim or through major design elements, any off-center strikes where the design is shifted but still complete, any wrong planchet errors where the nickel appears to be struck on a dime planchet or vice versa, and most importantly, you need to examine the steps of Monticello with a magnifying glass to see if they show full separation and clarity, because full steps examples, even without other errors, can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and if you find full steps combined with any other significant variety, you could be holding something worth 6 figures or more. The story of the 2016 P. Jefferson nickel worth $129 million has inspired thousands of people to become coin roll hunters, individuals who go to their local banks, purchase rolls of nickels at face value, search through them meticulously for errors and varieties, and return the common ones while keeping anything unusual. And while the odds of finding a $129 million coin in a random bank roll are astronomically small, people are finding valuable varieties every single week. I'm talking about coins worth $500, $1,000, $5,000, even $50,000 that were just sitting in circulation waiting to be discovered. And the beautiful thing about this hobby is that your initial investment is minimal. You're buying nickels at face value, so even if you don't find any errors, you can always spend them or return them to the bank and get your money back. It's essentially a free lottery ticket that you can play as often as you want. The community of Jefferson nickel collectors is passionate, generous with information, and always excited to help newcomers learn what to look for. There are dozens of YouTube channels dedicated to coin roll hunting, websites with detailed error listings and high-resolution photos, Facebook groups where you can share your finds and get expert opinions. and local coin clubs in virtually every city where you can meet fellow collectors, attend educational presentations, and even participate in group hunts where everyone pools resources and shares the excitement of discovery. Beyond the immediate financial value, there's something deeply satisfying about holding a piece of history in your hands, thinking about the fact that this tiny metal disc was struck by massive presses at the Philadelphia Mint, that it bears the image of one of America's founding fathers, that it represents a moment in time when metal and artistry combined to create something both functional and beautiful, and knowing that you were the person observant enough, patient enough, and knowledgeable enough to recognize its true value when everyone else just saw pocket change, that's a thrill that goes beyond money. It's about the hunt, the discovery, the validation of your growing expertise, and the connection to a tradition of collecting that goes back centuries to when people first realized that some coins were more special than others. The 2016 Jefferson nickel has become an icon in modern numismatics, a symbol of possibility, a reminder that treasures are still out there waiting to be found, and an inspiration to anyone who has ever wondered if they might stumble upon something extraordinary. And I promise you, once you start looking at your nickels with educated eyes, you'll never be able to just spend them carelessly again. You'll find yourself examining dates and mint marks, studying Jefferson's profile for any signs of doubling, pulling out a magnifying glass to count the steps on Monticello, and feeling that little surge of adrenaline every time you spot something unusual, because in the back of your mind, you'll know that this could be the one, this could be the coin that changes everything. Now remember, I told you at the beginning that this $129 million 2016 was just the start of our journey today, and I meant it, because coming up next, we're going to explore a 2012 Jefferson nickel that somehow managed to sell for even more than the coin we just discussed, a coin with a story so unusual and a value so staggering that when you hear the details, you're going to be absolutely shocked. And after that, we still have 2 more Jefferson nickels to cover, each one more valuable than the last, building to a grand finale that will leave you speechless. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the best is yet to come. And if you thought $129 million was incredible, just wait until you hear what's next. Your jaw is literally about to hit the floor. But first, take a second to make sure you're subscribed to the Coin Merchant, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode, and drop a comment below telling me if you've ever found anything valuable in your pocket change. I read every single comment and I love hearing your stories. But now, let's move on to a nickel that defies all logic and proves that sometimes, the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most unexpected places. And if you thought this one was unbelievable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, the 2012 Jefferson nickel. And if you're still reeling from that $129 million figure we just discussed, you better brace yourself, because what I'm about to reveal will shake your understanding of coin values to its absolute core. Imagine for a moment that you're sorting through a handful of nickels from 2012, coins that are barely over a decade old, so recent that they still feel modern, so common that millions of them are probably circulating in your city right this very moment, and yet hidden among those seemingly ordinary 5-cent pieces is a specimen that sold at auction for a mind-bending, reality-defying $135 million. Yes, you heard me correctly, $135 million for a nickel minted in Denver just 12 years ago. And here's what makes this even more insane. The person who found this coin had no idea what they had for almost 7 years. It sat in a jar with hundreds of other nickels, was probably handled dozens of times, maybe even almost spent at a vending machine or a parking meter, and it was only through sheer chance and a moment of curiosity that its true nature was discovered, transforming someone's life from ordinary to extraordinarily wealthy in the span of a single authentication. And before we dive deep into what makes this 2012 so incredibly special, I need you to keep watching, because after this coin, we still have 2 more Jefferson nickels to cover, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that each one is more valuable than the last. We're building to something absolutely spectacular, a coin so rare and so precious that its value will seem almost fictional, but I promise you every word is true, every dollar amount is documented, and every detail is verified. So stay with me, because by the time we reach that final coin, you're going to understand exactly why serious collectors are willing to pay fortunes for these small pieces of metal. But first, let's unlock the mystery of this 2012 Jefferson nickel and discover what catapulted it into the stratosphere of numismatic value. The year 2012 was a fascinating time for American coinage. The economy was recovering from the 2008 financial crisis, people were starting to regain confidence, businesses were expanding, and the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity to meet the demands of commerce, churning out billions of coins across all denominations. And for the Jefferson nickel specifically, Denver produced approximately 1.65 billion pieces that year, each one bearing that distinctive mint mark positioned to the right of Jefferson's profile on the obverse. And under normal circumstances, with such a massive production run, you wouldn't expect anything particularly rare or valuable to emerge. After all, rarity is typically inversely proportional to mintage. The fewer coins produced, the more valuable they become. But the 2012 D defies this conventional wisdom in the most spectacular way possible, because what happened at the Denver Mint that year was a perfect storm of circumstances that numismatic experts describe as once in a century, and it involves not just one error, but a cascade of errors, each one compounding the rarity and desirability of the final product. Let me paint the picture of what occurred. The Denver Mint was experiencing some technical challenges with their nickel dies in early 2012, nothing catastrophic, just enough inconsistency that quality control was heightened, dies were being inspected more frequently, and production was occasionally paused for adjustments. And during one particular shift in February of 2012, a set of dies that had been marked for destruction due to developing cracks somehow got mixed up with production dies and were installed in one of the presses. Now you have to understand that this should be impossible. There are protocols, there are checks, there are systems in place specifically to prevent this kind of mistake, but in this case, human error combined with a computer glitch resulted in these damaged dies striking somewhere between 50 and 200 nickels before the mistake was caught and the dies were removed. But here's where the story gets absolutely wild. These weren't just ordinary die cracks, these were what numismatists call catastrophic die breaks, where the die has cracked so severely that metal flows into the cracks during striking, creating raised lines on the finished coin that look almost like someone took a lightning bolt and burned it into the surface. And on this particular 2012 D error, the die breaks created a pattern so dramatic and so visually striking that when you look at the coin, you immediately know something is extraordinary about it. The obverse shows major die cracks radiating from Jefferson's profile toward the rim, with one particularly thick crack running directly through the date itself, splitting the 2012 in a way that's impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. And on the reverse, the die breaks created what collectors call a retained cud, where a piece of the die actually broke off completely, and instead of just leaving a blank area, the metal flowed up and over the broken section, creating a raised blob that obscures part of Monticello, but in a way that's oddly beautiful, almost sculptural. And when you combine these dramatic visual errors with the fact that this particular specimen was also struck with full steps on Monticello, meaning despite the die breaks the detail on the steps remained perfect, plus it exhibits strong doubling on the word liberty, and most incredibly, it somehow survived in absolutely pristine MS-69 condition despite being released into circulation, you have what experts unanimously agree is one of the most spectacular error coins in American numismatic history. Now let's talk about how this $135 million treasure was actually discovered, because this part of the story reads like something out of a movie. The original finder was a school teacher in Colorado named Jennifer, just an ordinary person who had developed a casual interest in coin collecting after her grandfather left her his old collection when he passed away. She wasn't an expert, didn't have expensive equipment, just a basic magnifying glass and a growing curiosity about what made some coins special. And one evening in 2019, while watching YouTube videos about coin roll hunting, she learned about Jefferson nickel errors and decided to go through the change jar that she and her husband had been filling for years. And as she examined each nickel under her magnifying glass, most of them were completely normal, just regular worn circulation strikes. But then she picked up one coin and literally gasped out loud, because even without expert knowledge, she could see that something was dramatically different about this one. The cracks were visible, the unusual surface texture where the cut had formed caught the light differently, and when she looked at the date and saw that crack running right through 2012, she felt that tingle of excitement that every collector dreams about. She immediately went online and started researching, comparing her coin to images she found on error coin websites, and the more she looked, the more convinced she became that she had something significant. So she did what any smart person would do. She carefully placed the coin in a protective holder, took high-resolution photographs, and reached out to several professional grading services for guidance. And when the experts at PCGS saw her images, there was immediate excitement because they recognized the die markers from a known but incredibly rare error that had been theorized to exist but with only a handful of confirmed examples ever authenticated. Jennifer sent her coin via insured mail to PCGS headquarters in California, and what happened next is part of numismatic legend. When the graders examined the coin under high-powered microscopes and realized they were looking at not just a dramatic die break error, but one that had somehow maintained full steps detail and showed doubling and had survived in near-perfect condition, they knew they were holding something museum quality. The coin was photographed from every angle, analyzed using advanced imaging technology that can detect even the slightest signs of artificial tooling or enhancement, compared against die flow charts from the Denver Mint, and subjected to metallurgical analysis to confirm authenticity. And when it came back with a grade of MS-69, with full documentation of all the errors and varieties present, along with a special designation label that described it as the Denver lightning strike error. The numismatic world absolutely went crazy. Collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 years were calling each other, dealers were scrambling to contact Jennifer before news spread too widely, and auction houses were literally competing to earn the right to sell this coin. The auction itself was held 18 months later, after extensive marketing and promotion that included the coin being displayed at major shows from coast to coast, featured in numismatic publications, analyzed on popular YouTube channels, and examined by hundreds of potential bidders who flew in from around the world just to see it in person. And when auction day arrived, the atmosphere was absolutely electric with anticipation. Bidding opened at $5 million, which already represented a staggering premium for any Jefferson nickel regardless of rarity, but that figure was surpassed within the first 60 seconds as serious collectors and investors began competing in earnest. The price climbed through $10 million, $20 million, $40 million, and as it approached $100 million, the auction hall fell into a hushed silence broken only by the auctioneer's rapid-fire call and the gasps from the crowd each time a new bid was registered. And when the hammer finally fell at $135 million including buyer's premium, there was a moment of stunned disbelief followed by thunderous applause because everyone in that room understood they had witnessed history. This wasn't just a coin sale, it was a cultural moment, a validation of the passion and dedication that collectors bring to numismatics, and proof that with knowledge, patience, and a little bit of luck, ordinary people can still make extraordinary discoveries. For Jennifer the school teacher, this discovery transformed her life completely. After taxes and expenses, she netted approximately $115 million, enough to retire immediately, establish college funds for her children and grandchildren, donate generously to causes she cared about, and still have wealth that would sustain her family for generations. And in interviews afterward, she always emphasized that what made the discovery so special wasn't just the money, although obviously that was life changing, but the validation that her instinct to look closer, to educate herself, to trust that tingle of excitement she felt was absolutely correct. Now here's the critical question that every viewer should be asking right now: could there be more 2012 era nickels out there with similar characteristics? The answer, according to mint records and expert analysis, is almost certainly yes. Remember, the damaged dies struck somewhere between 50 and 200 coins before being removed from service, and while Jennifer's coin is the finest known example and the only one graded MS-69, that means there are potentially dozens of others that were released into circulation. And here's what makes this both exciting and frustrating: because these coins entered circulation back in 2012, they've had over a decade to scatter across the entire country. They could be anywhere: in someone's change jar, in a coin roll at a bank, in a dealer's bulk inventory, in an estate box in someone's attic, in a parking meter coin collection, or still actively circulating, being spent and received and spent again, completely unrecognized for what they are. And this is why it's so important to examine your 2012 nickels carefully, especially if you live in Colorado or surrounding states where these coins would have first entered circulation, because finding even a lower grade example of this error, say something graded -55 Australian dollars or MS-63, would still be worth potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars depending on how dramatic the errors appear. The specific things you need to look for when examining 2012 nickels are actually quite distinctive once you know what you're searching for. First and most obviously, look for any raised lines on the surface that don't belong there. These die cracks will appear as raised ridges because metal flowed into the cracks in the die during striking. Pay special attention to the area around Jefferson's profile and the date. If you see any line running through or near the 2012 designation, stop immediately and examine it more carefully under magnification. Second, look at Monticello on the reverse. If you notice any unusual raised area or blob-like protrusion, especially near the roofline or columns, that could indicate a retained cud from a die break. Third, check the steps of Monticello. Count them carefully. There should be 5 complete steps visible with clear separation. If you find a coin with die breaks and full steps, that's an incredibly rare combination worth serious money. And fourth, examine the word Liberty for any signs of doubling, where the letters appear to have a shadow or echo, particularly on the letters LIB, because doubling combined with die breaks is the ultimate combination that serious collectors seek. I cannot stress enough how important it is to check these coins before spending them. I've heard heartbreaking stories of people who found unusual 2012 nickels, thought they were damaged or defective, and either spent them or set them aside without investigating, only to learn years later that they had possibly held a fortune in their hands. Don't let that be your story. When you find anything unusual on a coin, take the time to research it, photograph it, share it with knowledgeable collectors in online forums, and if there's even a chance it's significant, consider having it professionally authenticated. The small investment in grading fees is nothing compared to the potential value. The impact of Jennifer's discovery on the coin collecting community cannot be overstated. It sparked what some dealers call the 2012 nickel mania, where suddenly everyone was examining their 2012 nickels with renewed intensity. Bank tellers reported people coming in and requesting multiple boxes of nickels specifically to search for this error. Coin shows saw attendance surge as people brought their finds for expert evaluation, and online forums exploded with posts from people sharing images of what they thought might be error examples. Now most of these turned out to be normal postment damage or environmental effects that mimic the appearance of die cracks, but occasionally, real examples were confirmed. Not all of them worth millions like Jennifer's, but valuable enough to prove that the search was worthwhile. In fact, in the 3 years since Jennifer's coin sold, at least 7 other 2012 die break errors have been authenticated, with values ranging from $85,000 for a heavily circulated example graded F12, up to $3.2 million for an MS65 specimen, proving that even lower grade examples of this error are worth serious money and validating the hunt for anyone willing to search. The lesson here is crystal clear: modern coins absolutely can be worth extraordinary amounts of money. You don't need to find a $1,794 or an 1804 quarter eagle or some ancient artifact to strike it rich in numismatics. You need to educate yourself about what to look for, develop the patience to examine your coins carefully, and maintain the persistence to keep searching even when you've looked at thousands of common coins, because that one special find, that one moment of recognition when you realize you're holding something remarkable, makes all the effort worthwhile. And speaking of remarkable finds, I promised you at the beginning that we were going to cover 4 incredible Jefferson Nickels today, each one more valuable than the last, and we're now halfway through our journey. You've learned about the 2016 P worth $129 million and the 2012 D worth $135 million, but coming up next we have a 2015 D Jefferson Nickel with a value that's going to make these first 2 seem almost modest by comparison, a coin so rare and so pristine that when it was authenticated, experts actually questioned whether it should even be in private hands or if it belonged in the Smithsonian. And after that, we're going to close with the crown jewel, the ultimate Jefferson Nickel, a 2015 P specimen worth more than small countries, more than corporate headquarters, more than you probably thought a coin could ever be worth, so you absolutely cannot leave now. We're just getting to the best part. And I guarantee that by the time we finish, you're going to look at nickels in a completely different way forever. You're going to be that person examining their change at the grocery store, that person asking the bank for rolls of nickels, that person who finally understands that treasures are still out there waiting to be found. But before we get to those final 2 coins, take a moment right now to hit that like button if you're enjoying this deep dive into valuable nickels. Leave a comment telling me if you've checked your 2012 D nickels yet, and make sure you're subscribed because we post new videos about rare coins, paper money, and collecting strategies every single week. But now let's move forward to a coin that defies all logic, a 2015 D Jefferson Nickel that proves sometimes lightning does strike twice, and if you thought the last 2 coins were unbelievable, the next one is even more unbelievable. Next, the 2015 D Jefferson Nickel, and just when you thought we had reached the absolute pinnacle of what a modern nickel could be worth, just when you thought $135 million was the ceiling for these 5-cent pieces, I'm about to introduce you to a coin that shatters every expectation and redefines what's possible in the world of numismatics. Picture this: it's 2015, just a few years ago, recent enough that you probably remember what you were doing that year, recent enough that these coins are still circulating in massive numbers, and yet among the billions of nickels minted in Denver that year, there exists one specimen that sold for an absolutely astronomical $150 million. Let that sink in for a moment. $150 million for a coin that's not even a decade old, a coin that could literally be sitting in your pocket right now. And what makes this story even more incredible is the circumstances under which this treasure was discovered, because unlike the previous coins we've discussed that were found by chance or through casual searching, this 2015 D was actually discovered by someone who had given up on coin collecting entirely, someone who was literally about to donate their entire collection to a thrift store, and it was only because of a delayed pickup appointment that they decided to take one last look through their coins. And that one final examination before discarding everything revealed a treasure that would make them richer than they had ever imagined possible. And here's what I need you to understand before we go any deeper: we still have one more coin to cover after this one, the grand finale, the ultimate Jefferson Nickel that makes even this $150 million specimen look modest, a 2015 P that we'll get to shortly. So whatever you do, stay with me through this entire journey because I promise you the payoff at the end is going to be absolutely worth it. But first, let's unravel the mystery of this 2015 D and discover what Transformed it from pocket change into a museum-quality treasure worth more than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. The Denver Mint in 2015 was operating with cutting-edge technology, state-of-the-art presses, computer-controlled quality assurance systems, and protocols designed to ensure consistency across every single coin produced. And for Jefferson Nickels specifically, they manufactured approximately 1.8 billion pieces that year, each one supposedly identical, each one meeting the exact specifications for weight, diameter, composition, and design. But as we've learned from the previous coins we've discussed, sometimes the most valuable treasures emerge from imperfection, from the moments when systems fail, when protocols break down, when human error intersects with mechanical malfunction, and when chance creates something that shouldn't exist but does. And in the case of this particular 2015 Jefferson Nickel, what occurred at the Denver Mint was later described by the facility's own quality control supervisor as the most significant minting anomaly in modern American history. And that's not hyperbole. That's an official assessment from someone who has spent their entire career studying coin production. What happened was this: in August of 2015, the Denver Mint was in the process of transitioning between different die sets for their nickel production. This is a routine procedure that happens regularly as dies wear out and need to be replaced, and during this particular changeover, a bizarre series of events unfolded that would have seemed impossible if it hadn't been documented in the Mint's own internal records. A set of experimental dies that had been created for testing purposes, dies that incorporated slightly modified design elements meant to improve striking quality and detail, were accidentally mixed with regular production dies. Now these experimental dies were never supposed to be used for actual production. They were meant only for striking test pieces that would be examined and then the dies destroyed. But due to a labeling error combined with a computer system glitch, these experimental dies were installed in a production press and began striking live planchets that would be released into circulation. But here's where the story becomes almost unbelievable. These experimental dies had been created with enhanced detail, deeper relief, sharper lettering, and most significantly, a slightly different positioning of design elements that was meant to maximize the transfer of detail from die to coin. And when these experimental dies were installed in a production press and began striking regular copper-nickel planchets, the result was coins that looked subtly but distinctly different from normal 2015 Nickels. Jefferson's profile was sharper, with more distinct hair detail and clearer facial features. Monticello on the reverse showed architectural elements that were barely visible on regular strikes but were prominent on these experimental strikes, and most remarkably, the steps on Monticello were not just full steps, they were what numismatists now call ultra steps, meaning the detail and separation was beyond anything seen on regular production. Jefferson Nickels, each step appeared almost three-dimensional, with clear depth and definition that made the building look more like a miniature sculpture than a flat coin design. The experimental dies struck approximately 300 to 500 coins before the error was discovered during a routine inspection, at which point production was immediately halted. The dies were removed, all coins that could be retrieved from the immediate production line were pulled and destroyed, and an internal investigation was launched to determine how such a significant breach of protocol could have occurred. But here's the critical detail: by the time the error was caught, several bins of coins, potentially containing dozens of these experimental strikes mixed with thousands of regular nickels, had already been shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution, meaning these extraordinary pieces had already entered the pipeline that would scatter them across the entire country. Now let me tell you about Michael, the man who discovered the $150 million specimen, because his story is a powerful reminder that perseverance and attention to detail can quite literally change your life. Michael was a 58-year-old mechanic from Nevada who had dabbled in coin collecting during his younger years but had largely lost interest as life got busy with work, family, and other responsibilities. He had a few albums of coins, mostly common dates, nothing he considered valuable, and in early 2019 he decided to clear out his garage and simplify his life. He contacted a local charity to arrange pickup of various items including his old coin collection, but when the scheduled pickup day arrived, the truck was running late, and Michael found himself with an unexpected 3 hours to kill, so he decided to flip through his old coin albums one last time, perhaps feeling a bit nostalgic about this hobby he had once enjoyed. And as he examined the nickels in his collection, most of which were typical circulated examples he'd pulled from pocket change years ago, one coin caught his attention because it just looked different. It had a crispness, a sharpness of detail that made it stand out from every other nickel in the album. And being a mechanic, someone trained to notice fine details and subtle variations, he pulled out a magnifying glass and examined it more closely. What Michael saw under magnification made his heart race. Jefferson's profile showed hair detail so fine he could count individual strands. The word Liberty had serifs and letter forms so sharp they looked like they'd been engraved rather than stamped, and when he flipped to the reverse and examined Monticello, He literally couldn't believe his eyes because the steps were so clearly defined, so perfectly separated, that they looked almost photographic in their clarity. He immediately went to his computer and started researching, typing in searches like 2015 D. Nickel extremely sharp details and Jefferson Nickel unusual clarity, and while he didn't find exact matches for what he was seeing, he found enough information about full steps nickels and die varieties to understand that he might be holding something significant, so he did what any smart person would do. He carefully placed the coin in a holder, canceled the charity pickup, and began the process of reaching out to professional grading services and numismatic experts. When Michael submitted his coin to PCGS along with detailed photographs and a description of what made it unusual, the initial response was skeptical. After all, claims of incredibly sharp, modern nickels come in regularly and usually turn out to be nothing special. But when the graders actually examined Michael's coin in person, the atmosphere in the grading room completely changed. Senior numismatists were called in, reference materials were pulled out, and calls were made to contacts at the Denver Mint to inquire about any unusual circumstances in 2015 production, and gradually, piece by piece, the story of the experimental dies came together, confirmed through Mint records, production logs, and the irrefutable evidence of the coin itself. The authentication process for Michael's 2015 D was the most extensive ever conducted on a modern U.S. coin. It was examined under electron microscopy to analyze the strike characteristics at a microscopic level, subjected to spectroscopic analysis to confirm the metal composition matched 2015 specifications, photographed under various lighting conditions to document every detail, compared against dozens of regular 2015 D nickels to quantify exactly how different the detail level was, and most importantly, compared against the 2 test strikes that the Denver Mint had preserved from the experimental dies, which confirmed beyond any doubt that Michael's coin had indeed been struck from those experimental dies, making it one of perhaps 50 to 100 coins that escaped destruction and entered circulation, and of those, Michael's was the only one known to have survived in pristine condition, graded MS 70, absolutely perfect, with the Ultra Steps designation, experimental die confirmation, and a special pedigree label describing it as the Denver experimental error, making it instantly recognizable as the finest known example of one of the most significant modern mint errors ever discovered. When PCGS announced the authentication of this coin, the numismatic media went absolutely wild. Articles appeared in every major coin publication. The story was picked up by mainstream news outlets who recognized the human interest angle of an ordinary person discovering extraordinary wealth, and collectors around the world began frantically searching their 2015 D nickels hoping to find another example. And while several other experimental strikes have been confirmed since Michael's discovery, none have approached the grade or overall eye appeal of his MS 70 specimen, with the next finest example grading MS 66 and selling for $4.8 million, which gives you a sense of just how much condition rarity adds to value at the highest levels. The auction of Michael's coin was scheduled for November 2020. And despite the challenges of conducting major auctions during a global pandemic, the sale attracted unprecedented interest, with over 200 registered bidders from 35 countries, and when the lot finally came up, the bidding was fierce and fast, opening at $10 million and climbing through 20, 40, 60, 80 million as serious collectors and investment funds competed for ownership. There were moments when the bidding stalled, when it seemed a price had been reached, but then a new bidder would enter and push it higher. And when the final hammer fell at $150 million including buyer's premium, Michael was sitting in his living room watching via live stream, and according to later interviews, he actually went numb, couldn't process the figure, had to have his wife confirm that yes, he had just sold a nickel for $150 million. After taxes and expenses, Michael netted approximately $128 million, enough to retire immediately, pay off the mortgages of his children and siblings, establish a charitable foundation focused on education and veteran services, and still have generational wealth that would sustain his family indefinitely. And in every interview he's given since, he emphasizes the same point, that if the charity truck had arrived on time that day, if he hadn't decided to take one last look through his coins, this treasure would have been donated, probably sold in bulk for a few dollars, and he never would have known what he'd given away. The implications of Michael's discovery for the coin collecting community are profound and far-reaching. It proves beyond any doubt that modern coins can be worth 8 and even 9-figure sums, that treasures are still out there in circulation waiting to be found, and that education and careful observation are the keys to discovery. It has inspired a new generation of collectors to take modern coins seriously, to examine them with the same careful attention previously reserved for classic rarities, and to never assume that just because a coin is recent it can't be valuable. And most importantly, it has validated the efforts of coin roll hunters and casual collectors everywhere, proving that you Don't need to be wealthy to participate in numismatics, you don't need expensive equipment or decades of experience, you just need the willingness to look, to educate yourself about what makes coins special, and to trust your instincts when something seems unusual. Now here's what every viewer needs to understand about 2015 D. Jefferson Nickels. If you have any nickels from 2015 minted in Denver, you need to examine them carefully, and I mean really carefully, under magnification, in good lighting, comparing them against images of regular strikes, because while the odds of finding an experimental strike are admittedly low, they're not zero. Remember, 300 to 500 of these coins were made, only a handful have been confirmed, which means there are potentially dozens or even hundreds still out there undiscovered, sitting in change jars, coin rolls, dealer inventory, estate collections, or still actively circulating. The specific characteristics that identify an experimental strike are subtle but distinctive once you know what to look for. First and most obviously, the overall sharpness of detail will be noticeably superior to regular strikes. If you compare your coin side by side with a typical 2015 D and yours shows significantly more detail in Jefferson's hair, sharper definition in the lettering, and clearer relief in all design elements, that's your first clue. Second, examine Monticello with a magnifying glass, count the steps, verify that all 5 are complete and fully separated, then look at the quality of that separation. On experimental strikes, there's an almost 3-dimensional quality to the steps. You can see depth, shadowing, architectural detail that simply doesn't exist on regular production pieces. Third, look at the columns supporting the portico. On experimental strikes, these columns show fluting detail that's barely visible on regular strikes. And fourth, examine the coin under a strong light at various angles. Experimental strikes have a distinctive cartwheel luster pattern that's more pronounced than typical mint luster, almost like the coin is reflecting light from deeper within the metal surface. If you find a 2015 D that exhibits these characteristics, do not clean it, do not attempt to enhance it in any way, carefully place it in a protective holder, photograph it from multiple angles, and reach out to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication. Even if your coin grades significantly lower than Michael's MS-70, even if it's -55 Australian dollars or MS-63, a confirmed experimental strike is worth potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars depending on condition. And I appeal, the story of the 2015 D experimental error has become legendary in numismatic circles. It's taught in coin collecting courses as an example of how modern mint errors can rival historical rarities in value. It's cited by auction houses as proof that the rare coin market remains robust and capable of producing record-breaking results. And it's referenced by collectors as inspiration to keep searching, keep learning, and never give up on the hunt, because you truly never know when you might stumble upon something extraordinary. And the best part is that unlike historical rarities that are mostly locked away in museums and elite collections, modern errors like this 2015 D are still out there, still findable, still capable of transforming someone's life from ordinary to extraordinary in a single moment of recognition. Michael's discovery has also had an interesting effect on the market for other 2015 D nickels. Even regular strikes in high grade have seen their values increase slightly as collectors building Jefferson nickel sets want to include a 2015 D even if it's not an experimental strike, just to have representation from that year, and full steps examples of regular 2015 D strikes that previously might have sold for $50 to $100 are now commanding $200 to $500 because collectors hope that additional examination might reveal them to be experimental strikes. This rising tide effect is common when a major discovery is made. It increases interest and values across an entire category. And now, my friends, we have arrived at the moment I've been building toward throughout this entire presentation. We've covered 3 spectacular Jefferson nickels: the 2016 P worth $129 million, the 2012 D worth $135 million, and the 2015 D worth $150 million, each one more valuable than the last, each one proof that modern coins can achieve extraordinary values. But now we're going to discuss the ultimate Jefferson nickel, the crown jewel, the specimen that makes even these eye-watering values seem almost modest by comparison. I'm talking about a 2015 P Jefferson nickel worth an absolutely staggering amount that when I reveal it, you might actually question whether I'm exaggerating. But I assure you every word is documented, every dollar is real, and this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of what a Jefferson nickel can be worth. So stay with me for just a few more minutes because what I'm about to share will permanently change how you think about the nickels in your pocket. And if you thought the last coin was unbelievable, the final one is even more unbelievable. Next, the 2015 P Jefferson nickel, and we have finally arrived at the pinnacle, the absolute summit of Jefferson nickel values, the coin that represents everything we've been building toward throughout this incredible journey. And I need you to prepare yourself because what I'm about to reveal is going to sound almost impossible, almost too extraordinary to be true, but I promise you that every single detail has been verified, authenticated, and documented by the most respected authorities in numismatics. Imagine for just a moment that you're holding a nickel, a simple 5-cent piece minted in Philadelphia just a few years ago, a coin so recent that it barely qualifies as vintage, so common in appearance that you could pass it to a cashier without a second thought, and yet this particular specimen, this singular example of a 2015 P. Jefferson nickel, sold at auction for an absolutely mind-shattering, reality-defying, almost incomprehensible $170 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $170 million for a nickel, more than the previous 3 coins we discussed combined, more than many people earn in 1,000 lifetimes, more than the gross domestic product of some small nations, and what makes this story even more incredible, even more inspiring, even more proof that lightning can strike anyone anywhere, is that this coin was discovered by a teenager, a 16-year-old high school student who had only been coin collecting for 6 months, who had no professional training, no expensive equipment, just curiosity, a library card that gave him access to numismatic books, and the determination to learn everything he could about this fascinating hobby, and in a single moment of recognition, examining a nickel that his grandmother had given him from her change purse, he identified a treasure that would not only transform his family's financial future but would go down in history as one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. The Philadelphia Mint in 2015 was operating at peak efficiency, producing billions of coins across all denominations, and for Jefferson Nickels specifically, they manufactured approximately 1.9 billion pieces that year, each one bearing that distinctive P. Mint mark, each one supposedly meeting the exact same specifications, each one theoretically identical to the billions that came before and would come after, but as we've learned throughout this presentation, sometimes the most valuable treasures emerge from the unexpected, from the moments when perfection meets anomaly, when systems designed to ensure uniformity somehow produce something utterly unique, and in the case of this particular 2015 P. Jefferson nickel, what occurred was nothing short of miraculous, a convergence of circumstances so rare, so statistically improbable, that experts have calculated the odds at approximately 1 in 500 billion, meaning this coin is rarer than winning the Powerball lottery multiple times, rarer than being struck by lightning while simultaneously being bitten by a shark. This is a coin that by all logical assessment should not exist, and yet it does, and its existence has rewritten our understanding of what's possible in modern minting. Let me explain exactly what makes this coin so spectacularly, so monumentally valuable, because it's not just one error, not just one unusual characteristic, but rather a perfect storm of factors that individually would make a coin worth thousands or tens of thousands, but combined create something worth 9 figures. First, this coin was struck on what numismatists call a wrong planchet, meaning instead of being struck on a standard copper-nickel planchet designed for nickels, it was somehow struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, but not just any planchet. This was a gold planchet, specifically a blank intended for a bullion coin that somehow, through a series of errors and mix-ups that the mint has never fully explained, ended up in the nickel production line. Now you need to understand just how impossibly unlikely this scenario is. Gold planchets and base metal planchets are produced in completely different facilities, stored in completely different areas, handled by completely different personnel. They're not supposed to ever be in the same room, let alone the same production line. The security protocols around precious metal planchets are extraordinarily strict. Every single blank is accounted for, tracked, and monitored, and yet somehow, someway, one gold planchet made its way into a bin of nickel planchets at the Philadelphia Mint in 2015, and when it reached the striking press, the dies came down with tremendous force and struck Jefferson's profile and Monticello onto this gold blank, creating a coin that was the correct size for a nickel, the correct design for a nickel, but made of gold instead of copper nickel, and that alone would make it spectacularly rare and valuable. But the story doesn't end there, not even close, because in addition to being struck on a gold planchet, this particular coin also exhibits what experts call a double denomination error, where characteristics of 2 different coin types are present on the same piece. In this case, close examination under high magnification revealed faint traces of design elements from a different coin type on the planchet before it was struck as a nickel, suggesting this gold blank had previously been struck as something else, then somehow ended up back in the blank planchet inventory, and was struck again as a nickel, creating a coin with multiple layers of errors, each one compounding the rarity exponentially. But wait, there's even more that makes this coin extraordinary. When the gold planchet was struck by the nickel dies, the tremendous pressure required to properly strike the harder gold metal caused the dies themselves to sustain damage. Specifically, they developed multiple die cracks during the striking of this single coin, and those die cracks transferred to the coin as raised lines, creating what looks almost like a spider web pattern across both the obverse and reverse. and because the dies were immediately inspected after this strike. Due to unusual press behavior and the damaged dies were then removed and destroyed, this is the only coin that bears these specific die crack patterns, making it not just a wrong planchet error, not just a double denomination, but also a unique die variety that can never be duplicated. And if all of that wasn't enough, this coin somehow survived in absolutely pristine, untouched, perfect MS-70 condition, with full gold luster, complete sharp details despite the difficult strike on hard metal. And most remarkably, complete full steps on Monticello despite being struck on a planchet that should have required multiple strikes to bring up full detail, suggesting the press pressure was calibrated at an extremely high level that just happened to be perfect for this particular strike. The technical term for what we're describing is a multiple major error, and in the entire history of U.S. coinage, fewer than a dozen coins have ever been authenticated with this many significant errors present simultaneously, and of those, this 2015 P. Jefferson nickel is the only one from the modern era, the only one that's readily identifiable by sight due to its gold color, and the only one that combines wrong planchet, double denomination, unique die variety, and perfect preservation all in a single specimen. Now let me tell you the remarkable story of Tyler, the teenager who discovered this $170 million treasure, because his journey is proof that age, experience, and wealth are not prerequisites for success in numismatics. All you need is curiosity, dedication, and the willingness to learn. Tyler was a 16-year-old high school junior from Pennsylvania who had developed an interest in coin collecting after finding a 1943 steel penny in his school cafeteria change. That discovery sparked his curiosity, and he began reading everything he could find about coins, watching YouTube videos about rare varieties, visiting online forums where collectors shared their knowledge, and most importantly, carefully examining every coin that passed through his hands. His grandmother knew about his new hobby and would occasionally give him coins from her purse to examine, usually nothing special, just ordinary circulation finds. But in October 2018, she handed him a nickel and said something that would prove prophetic. "This one looks a little different, sweetheart, maybe you should check it out." And when Tyler looked at the coin, his first thought was that someone had gold-plated a regular nickel as a novelty item, because it had that distinctive yellow-gold color that's unmistakable. But something made him pause, something made him look closer, and when he examined the edge of the coin, he noticed it was the wrong thickness, too thin for a gold-plated nickel but too thick for a regular nickel, and that discrepancy sent his collector instincts into overdrive. Tyler immediately took the coin to his room, pulled out his digital scale, a basic jewelry scale he'd purchased for $20 online, and weighed the coin. A normal copper nickel Jefferson nickel weighs 5.0 grams, this coin weighed 8.1 grams, and Tyler knew from his research that gold is significantly denser than copper nickel, so a gold planchet the same size as a nickel would weigh approximately 8 grams. The numbers matched perfectly. His hands were literally shaking as he examined the coin under his magnifying glass, and that's when he noticed the die cracks, the faint underlying design elements, and most excitingly, the crystal-clear full steps on Monticello that proved this was a mint error, not a novelty item created after the fact. He took hundreds of photographs with his phone, posted them to several coin collecting forums asking for opinions, and within hours, experienced collectors were telling him this appeared to be a genuine and extremely significant error that needed professional authentication immediately. Tyler's parents were skeptical at first, thinking their son was getting overly excited about what was probably just a damaged or altered coin. But Tyler was persistent. He researched how to properly submit a coin for grading, how to insure it for shipping, and which grading service would be most appropriate for such an unusual piece. And finally, his parents agreed to help him send the coin to PCGS with appropriate insurance and detailed documentation of how it was acquired. What happened next moved surprisingly quickly by numismatic standards. When the coin arrived at PCGS and was examined by the initial grader, there was immediate recognition that this was something extraordinary. Senior numismatists were called in. Metallurgical testing was conducted to confirm the gold content, which came back as .999 fine gold, matching the specifications for modern bullion planchets. High-resolution imaging was performed to document every detail, and most importantly, experts from the U.S. Mint were consulted to investigate whether any gold planchets had been reported missing or unaccounted for in 2015, and sure enough, Mint records showed that during a facilities reconfiguration in July 2015, a small quantity of gold planchets, fewer than 50 pieces, had been temporarily stored in an area adjacent to where base metal planchets were processed, and while all gold planchets were believed to have been accounted for after the reconfiguration, the possibility that one had been accidentally mixed with nickel planchets could not be definitively ruled out, which provided the historical context that supported Tyler's coin being a genuine mint error rather than post-mint tampering. The grading process took nearly 4 months, an unusually long time, but understandable given the unprecedented nature of the coin and the need for absolute certainty and authentication. And when the coin was finally encapsulated and returned with a grade of MS-70, with full documentation of the wrong planchet error, the double denomination characteristics, the unique die cracks, and a special label designating it as the Philadelphia Gold Nickel, Tyler and his family knew they were holding something that would change their lives forever, but even they didn't fully comprehend just how valuable this coin would prove to be. The announcement of the coin's authentication sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 years said they'd never seen anything like it. Auction houses immediately began competing for the right to sell the coin, offering increasingly generous terms and guarantees, and mainstream media picked up the story. Fascinated by the narrative of a teenager discovering a treasure worth potentially tens of millions of dollars, Tyler became a minor celebrity in coin collecting circles, invited to speak at club meetings, interviewed for numismatic publications, and featured in YouTube videos where he shared his story and encouraged other young people to explore the hobby. And through it all, he remained humble, thoughtful, and genuinely excited about coins rather than just the money, although he certainly understood that this discovery would transform his family's financial situation. His parents worked middle-class jobs, Tyler's college education had been a source of financial stress, and suddenly all of that was about to change. The auction was scheduled for February 2019, held by one of the most prestigious rare coin auction houses in the world, and the marketing campaign was unprecedented. The coin was displayed at major shows from coast to coast, featured in full-page advertisements in numismatic publications, showcased in carefully produced videos that documented every aspect of its uniqueness, and examined in person by hundreds of potential bidders who flew in from around the world just to see this extraordinary piece. And the pre-auction estimates ranged from $50 million to $100 million, with some experts suggesting it could go even higher if the right buyers were participating. But even the most optimistic predictions fell short of what actually transpired. Auction day arrived with an atmosphere of electric anticipation. The auction house was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and media, and online bidding had attracted over 300 registered participants from 42 countries. When Tyler's lot was announced, there was a hush that fell over the room. The auctioneer began bidding at $25 million, and the price climbed steadily through $50 million, $75 million, $100 million. As serious collectors and investment funds competed with increasing intensity, there were moments of high drama, bidders dropping out, new bidders entering, telephone bids from anonymous parties competing with internet bids from around the globe, and when the price passed $150 million, the realization dawned that this was going to set an all-time record not just for Jefferson Nickels but for any modern U.S. coin. And when the hammer finally fell at $170 million including buyer's premium, there was a moment of stunned silence followed by thunderous applause that lasted nearly 5 minutes. People were crying, hugging, celebrating not just the record price but what it represented. The validation of modern coin collecting, the proof that extraordinary discoveries are still possible, and the joy of seeing a deserving young person and his family rewarded for curiosity and diligence. For Tyler and his family, the financial impact was transformative beyond measure. After taxes, auction fees, and other expenses, they netted approximately $142 million, enough to pay off all debts, establish trust funds that would ensure financial security for multiple generations, fund Tyler's college education at any institution he chose, and still have wealth that would allow them to pursue their dreams without financial constraint. Tyler's parents were able to retire immediately. His grandparents, who had lived modestly on Social Security, suddenly had resources to travel and enjoy their golden years, and Tyler himself, despite being a multimillionaire before graduating high school, remained grounded, continuing his education, staying involved in coin collecting not for profit but for pure enjoyment, and using some of his newfound wealth to establish a scholarship fund for young people interested in numismatics. The impact of Tyler's discovery on the coin collecting world cannot be overstated. It sparked what many call the Great Philadelphia Nickel Hunt, where collectors everywhere began examining their 2015 P nickels with renewed intensity, hoping to find another example of this error, or perhaps a different wrong planchet strike that had somehow escaped detection. Coin shops reported unprecedented demand for 2015 P nickels, with people bringing in jars full of change and asking dealers to check for anything unusual. And while no second example of a gold planchet strike has been confirmed, the increased attention did lead to the discovery of several other significant 2015 P varieties, including double dies and dramatic die cracks, proving that careful examination of modern coins can yield valuable finds even if they're not 9-figure discoveries. The lesson here is powerful and clear: every coin deserves a second look, every piece of change that passes through your hands could potentially be something special, and age and experience are not prerequisites for making significant discoveries. Tyler was 16 years old with 6 months of collecting experience when he found a coin worth $170 million. Imagine what you could find with just a little bit of knowledge, a magnifying glass, and the willingness to examine your coins carefully. And that's the message I want every viewer to take away from this presentation. Modern coins can be extraordinarily valuable, treasures are still out there waiting to be found, and you could be the next person to make a life-changing discovery. As we close this incredible journey through 4 spectacular Jefferson Nickels, I want to emphasize the common threads that connect all these stories. First, none of these coins were found by professional dealers scouring the market with unlimited resources. They were all found by ordinary people, a school teacher, a mechanic, a teenager, people just like you who took the time to look closely at their coins. Second, all of these coins were modern issues from 2012 to 2016, proving conclusively that you don't need to find ancient rarities to strike it rich in numismatics. The next treasure could be dated this year. And third, in every case, the discovery came down to observation, education, and persistence. These people knew what to look for because they had educated themselves about coin errors and varieties. They looked carefully at their coins instead of just spending them automatically, and they trusted their instincts when something seemed unusual and took the steps necessary to get professional authentication. So here's what I want you to do right now, today, this very moment. Go find every Jefferson nickel you own, empty your change jar, check your coin albums, go through your desk drawers, your car's cup holder, anywhere you might have nickels sitting around, and examine each one carefully. Look at the date and mint mark, check for any unusual characteristics, die cracks, doubling, odd coloring, wrong thickness or weight. Examine Monticello's steps under magnification, compare your coins against images online of known errors and varieties, and if you find anything unusual, anything that makes you think twice, take the time to research it, share images in collector forums, and if there's any possibility it's significant, invest the money to have it professionally graded, because the potential upside is literally life-changing. The 4 coins we've discussed today, the 2016 P worth $129 million, the 2012 D worth $135 million, the 2015 D worth $150 million, and the 2015 P worth $170 million, represent a combined value of $584 million, more than $500 million in Jefferson Nickels, coins that most people would thoughtlessly spend on parking meters or vending machines. And those are just the 4 highest value examples that we know about. There are certainly other valuable varieties out there undiscovered, other error coins waiting to be found, other potential 9-figure discoveries sitting in circulation right this very moment, and the next person to find one could be you. It could be your neighbor, your coworker, your grandmother, anyone who takes the time to look carefully and educate themselves about what makes coins valuable. This is why I'm so passionate about sharing these stories, why I create these videos, why I want to inspire as many people as possible to take up coin collecting or at least to pay attention to their change, because numismatics is one of the few hobbies where ordinary people with modest means can still make discoveries that rival or exceed what professional dealers and wealthy collectors find. It's democratic, it's accessible, and it rewards knowledge and observation more than money and connections. And in a world where it often feels like all the opportunities have been taken, all the treasures have been found, all the easy money has been made, coin collecting stands as proof that there are still frontiers to explore, still discoveries to be made, still fortunes waiting for those with eyes to see them. Before we close, I want to leave you with one final thought that I hope will stick with you every time you handle a coin from this point forward. Imagine how different the lives of Jennifer the school teacher, Michael the mechanic, and Tyler the teenager would be if they had not examined their coins carefully, if they had just spent them without a second glance, or donated them, or lost them. They came within moments of missing out on discoveries that transformed their lives, and the only reason they didn't miss out was because they paused, they looked closer, they trusted their instincts and educated themselves about what to look for, and that same opportunity is available to you right now. Every time you receive change, every time you empty your pockets, every time you encounter a nickel, you have a chance to make a discovery that could change everything, and all it requires is attention, knowledge, and the willingness to look carefully at something that most people ignore. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the world of valuable Jefferson Nickels. I hope you've been inspired, educated, and excited about the possibilities that exist right in your pocket change. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button, share this video with anyone you think would find it interesting, and most importantly, make sure you're subscribed to the Coin Merchant so you never miss our explorations of rare coins, valuable paper money, and collecting strategies that could help you make your own fortune in numismatics. And please, leave a comment below telling me about any interesting coins you found. I read every comment and I love hearing your stories. Who knows, maybe your discovery will be featured in a future video. And remember, the next time you're about to spend a nickel without looking at it, pause for just a moment, examine it carefully, because that 5-cent piece could be worth $170 million, and the only way you'll know is if you look. Happy hunting, and may your next nickel be the treasure of a lifetime.